Well, we're here in Dayton, Washington. We're at the Chief Springs Fire and Iron Brew Pub. Nice little town, Dayton, and we had dinner here last night. Really enjoyed the food and the conversation. So we're looking forward to talking to Ann and Mike Springs. And first question I had for you is, how'd you come up? What's the history, and how'd you come up with the name Chief Springs Fire and Iron Brew Pub?
Well, I was a fire chief. Probably 20 some years of my career, and so the Chief Springs part came pretty easy, and all my firefighter friends always call me Chief. So, and then the irons, fire and irons.
Yeah.
An irons is a set of tools that you pry doors open with.
Sure.
And so, as a guy on an engine or a fire chief, if they showed up to a fire, I'd always say, "Where's your irons? You don't get off the truck without a set of irons." So that's how we came about Chief Springs Fire and Irons.
Well, how did you end up from being a fire chief deciding that you were going to get into the pub business?
Well, retirement isn't all it's cracked up to be. And we love Dayton, so we were going to move to Dayton no matter what. And in fact, we bought our house before we bought the business here.
And where were you living before you moved to Dayton?
Tri-Cities.
Tri-Cities.
In West Richland.
Okay.
And so we bought the house here. We were hoping that we could work a deal out buying this place. We knew the owner wanted to sell, and but it took a long time for licensing and finances and reports and all that. Anyway, we finally got it purchased, and the reason behind it was I always had this romantic dream of standing behind the bar, serving people, and I like people. And people's what we do here is our motto is the only thing we serve is customer service.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So that's kind of the story behind it, and it came together, and then we kind of accidentally bought the pizzeria next door.
Oh, okay.
The owner, it was a pizzeria before when we bought this, and the owner had a heart attack and had to sell the business, and we ended up buying it.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So you have two businesces in the food industry.
Yeah, side by side.
Yeah.
So the food just gets walked across in to-go boxes or in bags to come across.
So how did you end up, what attracted you to Dayton? What was so special about Dayton?
Small, beautiful, access to the mountains, hunting, fishing.
Yeah.
One stoplight.
Yeah, one stoplight.
One stoplight. Yeah.
One stoplight town. And I grew up in Bend, Oregon. It reminds me of Bend when I was a little kid.
Sure.
And where'd you grow up, honey?
Imbler, Oregon. Little tiny town.
It doesn't even have a stoplight.
Nope.
No stoplight. So, I mean, were you in alignment with him when he said, "Oh, I can't wait to get a bar and go to work in a bar"?
Well, as I commented last night, no, not with a bar, but the brew pub thing was appealing because when we decided to do this, it was very popular. It's a different lifestyle than a bar, and so I was agreeable.
We close early, you know. We try not to ever overserve anybody.
Yeah.
In my line of work, I've scraped enough people off the pavement. I don't want them to leave here and have an accident.
Yeah.
And so we want people to come here and enjoy great beer, good food, and old friends.
That's great. Yeah. And I understand you actually brew the beer here.
Yeah. The brewery's right in the basement here.
Right in the basement. So how did you start brewing beer? Been doing that
a Mr. Brew set 25 years ago kind of got me involved, and then really I got more involved when I was the chief over in Tri-Cities, because they have a huge home brew group based out of Ice Harbor Brewery.
Oh, okay.
And so got involved, started going to their meetings, going to different guys' houses, brewing beer in their systems. It just was interesting.
Learning how to brew.
Yeah. Just
with the club.
Yeah.
And that turned into, so now most of the brews, I understand you brew here.
All
of them. So I'm drinking what they call Pike Pole honey, which is made out of local grains and stuff. So can you tell me a little bit about the agricultural area and the grains that you use and how you
bet.
Source your supply
Locally, as much as we possibly can. Our base grain, what every beer has in it as a base grain, is grown right here on the Poluse, between us and Spokane somewhere. It's guaranteed to be grown on the Poluse. So we pay a little extra for it, but it's really high quality grain. We know it's been grown by our neighbor farmers. We also use local wheat. All of our grains come out of the Great Western Malting Company, which is in Vancouver, Washington, and they malt it and bag it, and then we buy it.
So you mentioned the Palouse, so that's a geographic area.
Yeah.
So can you explain the origin of Palouse?
Well, maybe. The Palouse is the rolling hills and valleys that are really from the Blue Mountains up to the Spokane area.
Yeah.
And that's considered the Palouse, and it's one of the best grain growing regions in the whole United States. But it's also hilly. And so people from flatland country come here and watch those combines go across those side hills, and they're like, oh my God. But it's great soil. It holds the moisture much more better than a lot of other soils. So most of the farming is not irrigated. It's just,
I noticed that.
it just holds the moisture during the summer, and that's the way the grains grow.
So we were commenting last night. I'm from the Red River Valley in North Dakota and Minnesota.
Yeah.
A lot of grain there, and we were coming over I guess it would be the Palouse hills, and believe me, it took a long time to bicycle over those hills. But we were remarking as we came in about all the grains that had been harvested. You could see the straw and all that.
Yeah.
And we were curious about the type of wheat and grain that's grown here relative to maybe North Dakota. So the varieties around here?
So they have a hard red and they have a soft white, and that's pretty much the same type of grains they grow clear across the country. But they grow them different times of the year.
Yep.
And I'm not a farmer, so I don't know which one's which, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But we use a soft white wheat, and then we've also used a club wheat that we get from a local farmer. And so our wind farm wheat actually has raw wheat in it, not malted.
Interesting. So, and it's true. I mean, I call them hills, and they're these large fields on these hills.
Yeah.
North Dakota is flat as this. They're large farms, but flat, and these are large farms. And you think they should be in pasture, but they're planted in these. It's really beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
It's gold stock is in
early in the spring when it's green and it's windy. It looks like green waves running across the hills.
It's like the Great Grass Prairie.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Yep.
And then you'll have a brown field that's summer fallow, and then a green, and it's very picturesque. So.
Well, this area with the gorge and the Walla Walla Valley and all that, it's amazing to me the different kinds of agriculture that we have in this region. Fruits and vegetables and grains and all this kind of stuff.
Well, we brew an apple ale, and we have a orchard right up.
So
so we get fresh apple juice, and the very next day he squeezes it, and we brew it the next day.
Oh, cool!
So it's only on tap in the fall when the apples are being harvested.
Yep.
The pipeball honey, our honey's right off the mountain here. It's a thistle honey.
Oh, okay.
But it makes a great beer.
Yep.
And we try not to overpower it. It's not sweet, yucky. It's still an ale.
It's a good beer. So when you were doing the business, you've been in this. How long have you had the pub now?
8.5 years.
8.5 years. That's a long time.
It is a long time.
And you survived COVID?
We did.
So
we were completely closed on this side. We ran pickup and takeout out of the pizzeria. You could still buy growlers, but they didn't even allow outdoor seating at that time. So, and then we got back open last summer, and then they closed us again at 25%, and then 50%. I had to take one of the windows out, had to have ventilation and CO2 monitoring. And
that's a feat, though, to survive the crisis there.
And we had a really nice patio out back, and lot of our patrons came, and even when it was snowing, sat out there on the patio. And
That's great.
we had a wood stove, and then we had patio heaters. And
So, usually when you're in business like this, there comes a time when you're not sure it's all going to work, and you have to have a heart-to-heart talk around the kitchen table.
Yeah,
So
oh, yeah.
I'm wondering if that happened, and when it happened, what was that talk like, especially for you?
Well, to be honest, we've had a number of those talks,
Yeah.
and not closing was never an option. It still isn't an option. It's like, how do we continue on with the resources that we have? Right now, our challenge is staffing,
Mm-hmm.
can't get any employees.
and you know, we talk about it every day,
Sure.
and
Do we trim our hours? Are we closed? We're open 7 days a week. Do we close a couple days? You know,
Yeah.
and we have those discussions every morning. What are we going to do today? How are we going to change to meet the challenge? But I think that's the heart of any entrepreneur, is not giving up.
Yep.
Now, if we were losing our shorts and just pumping money into it, it'd be a different story.
Yep.
We would look at how we were going to exit. But we're still above board. The federal PPP money helped us through COVID. Without that, we'd been even more
Struggled.
on the fence.
struggle.
But it's interesting, though. You're right. It's kind of, you have these challenges, and you have to figure out a solution and be flexible and try to be open-minded and
You
make
do.
some changes.
Look at all your options. And one thing we've always tried to do is make sure we treat our employees well. And if you treat your employees well, they'll treat your customers well. And
Yeah. Great
it's
advice.
been really important to us to make sure they're taken care of.
So, before you started this, and you maybe talked to your friends and family and others about it, was there any specific sage advice that you got from someone that you just really think is a golden nugget?
You know, no, I don't think entrepreneurship was in my family. My dad worked for the city of Bend, Oregon, for
Mhm.
most of his life. He was in the Navy during the Korean War, and he wasn't a strike out on your own type of person. As a fire chief, I was accused of being too entrepreneurial with the fire department, trying to stretch the taxpayer dollars and make money for the fire department through going on state fires. And we ran a cabulance in a little volunteer department that made some people some money so they'd be hanging around the station more.
So you were like a maverick chief.
Yeah, I was. And some of my city council people didn't appreciate it.
Yeah.
And yet I was trying to save taxpayer dollars. And
So did that friction, that little bit of different insight that you had
Yeah.
in how to do things in the city, did that sort of scratch that itch you had to maybe start the pub a little bit, because it was
Maybe.
kind of time to transition?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I may have. I always felt that it was my job, again, to look after my employees, but also look after my citizens that I protected,
Yeah.
and what's the best way I could serve them with the resources I had. And that's pretty much what we've adopted here.
Well, it's obvious from our discussion here that you're committed to the community, that you see the pub and the pizzeria as part of servicing the community
Yeah.
and keeping the community vibrant, those kinds of things.
We sponsor baseball teams at 4-H, and we help up the bids on some of the
We
cows
donate.
and pigs, and
Yeah.
we donate to, it's called Jimmy Durante, but it's a help young kids type of fund in the community. We're fully committed to the community.
You know, that's one of the points of why we're doing this ride, is we want to point out that there's this link between entrepreneurship and committing to employees and investing in employees, and that leads to investing in the community, and that
It
these
does.
things are kind of all linked. And one of the ways
Yeah.
you have vibrant communities is because you have people like yourselves
Yeah.
that are committed to their business, and they're willing to invest in the community.
Yeah.
And that's the heartbeat of America, I think, is that.
Well, and Steve, on the flip side of that, the community supports us.
Oh, unbelievable.
Just last year when the pub had to be closed and they were just getting food out of the pizzeria. People that don't normally go out, or people that would go out maybe once a month, they made a commitment to go to the different restaurants at least once a week and supported the businesses, support us. It was just, it's very heartwarming.
And that's one of the reasons you said earlier that it sounds like that you really don't have a choice. You're committed to this. And,
right.
And unless the bottom falls out, you're sticking with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there becomes a point we aren't going to go broke and have to sell all of our personal belongings, but we're not even close to there. We're doing well, and we try to share that doing well with our employees and our community.
Yeah, that's great. So, is there any advice that you were given that was probably good advice that you didn't follow?
The only
Maybe
thing
you should or shouldn't have.
I don't know if I should say this or not. The only thing that comes to mind is don't buy a job.
Don't buy a job.
Yeah.
And
we've worked hard not to buy a job, but COVID's made that really hard to not do that. We have spent way too many hours here. We paid for COVID out of our own flesh, blood, sweat this last year. We think we can see the end. If everybody will get vaccinated, we know we'll see the end.
Yeah. So do you have any, for someone that might be listening to this and thinking about starting a business, is there any advice that you would have for someone that's a budding entrepreneur and they got something they're scratching and they're thinking about it?
A really good business plan. I mean, we were rejected 2 or 3 times at different banks to get financing. And then the third credit union just did backflips over it. Turns out we didn't even go that direction. We were financed by the previous owners. So, and I don't think we ever shared our business plan with them, did we?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we did. But, so don't give up if you have a dream. It was difficult dealing with the federal government. It was during the sequester time, and so the alcohol, tobacco, firearms didn't have enough employees, so it took lots and lots of months. I mean, more than you can imagine, to get your license at that time to brew beer. The state, on the other hand, everybody said, "Oh, the state's going to be terrible." They issued us a license pending the federal license just almost immediately. But don't give up. But also do your research. Make sure it's a viable business before you head into it. If you're going to buy a job and that's all you're going to do, stay in your current job. If you're going to buy a future for yourself and can see how it will come together, then you probably aren't going to make money for the first couple of years. Can you support yourself in those couple of years to get everything up and running?
So when you were going through the process of trying to get some financing and you were getting rejected, were you redoing your business plan and tweaking it? And was that helpful? Did you learn from that?
It was.
You didn't get the money. You learned something from the process.
Well, and I started reaching out in Tri-Cities. There's a huge, it's called TriDeck, and they're a small business help group, basically. And I reached out to them. They read through the business plan, showed me, you're probably missing this. You probably need to do that. What about your market research? What competition do you have? How much are they making? You know, Dayton's pretty small. Are you actually going to make any money with that small population? You might want to think about doing this in Wall or Tri-Cities. I mean, they were pretty brutal about it. You go, well, we don't want to live in Tri-Cities anymore. We don't want to live in Wall. We want to live in Dayton. Oh, well, do your market research. And we did. We went to different businesses that were open here and talked to them and looked at their menus.
So when you did that market research in this small region, small town, what gave you the confidence that you understood the market enough to say, okay, we can redo the business plan and I can redo the financials and I'm pretty comfortable we're going to be pretty close?
Well, I think hard numbers, because this was a brew pub when we bought it. It was called Sky Book and Brew, but it was more of a hobby business for the guy that owned it. And looking at his numbers, looking at other people's numbers that ran food service in town. I go, we can make enough money to make it and supplement our retirement income a little bit. And that was really, I mean, health insurance was a big deal.
Yep.
And so we wanted to be able to pay for our own health insurance. That was our goal initially.
So how how close have you been able to follow that business plan?
Not at all.
So that's a good lesson,
Yeah.
right? You got to, even though you have, they always say if you don't have a plan, you any route will get you there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a basis to begin with, but I mean, our business plan never included buying the pizzeria next door.
Right.
But it became an opportunity, and we didn't want to have some other business that might be directly competition, or we have a shared parking lot. We didn't want to lose the parking lot also. But we went, pizza and beer was in our original business plan, and then this place opened up in the meantime while we were waiting for financing to get all put together.
So that's another good lesson, I guess. You have a plan,
Yeah.
and a plan's a good plan until you get hit in the face,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's still a plan, and it helps you sort of navigate and adjust and take advantage of opportunities that you might not have had at the beginning, and,
Right.
you can deal with that. You can analyze.
You got to
it.
look at doors that are opening.
Yeah.
And if the door's open, do you want to step through or not? And does it make sense for your business? Some doors you don't want to step through. I mean, we've had chances to expand a brewery big time. We've had people want to invest huge amounts of money. We haven't stepped through those doors because that's not our dream, to have a
that's
production
good.
brewery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
I've had guys sit here and say, I'll write you checks for unbelievable amounts of money if you'll distribute your beer. And I go, I don't want to do that.
So that's a piece of advice. So you said business plan, know your market, know your competition, right?
Yeah.
Don't give up on your dream, but also know yourself.
Yeah.
Understand yourself and what you want,
More.
because you have to be in alignment with your values and visions with the people around you, your spouse,
Yeah.
your family, your community, your investors if you have investors, or if you're going to reject investors.
Yeah. Well, she'd probably kill me if I expanded at this point. She's, that's not her dream. This has never really been her dream. She's supported me on the dream. I can't imagine having a better business partner, though.
That's great. So what makes her such a good business partner?
She's a sounding board. She's a rock. She's here probably more hours than I am. She is 150% invested in making sure we succeed, even at her own detriment a lot of times. So she gives more than she should.
So that's another point you're making, is that if you're going to be an entrepreneur and strike out on your own, you have to have that family support.
Yeah.
Or it's very difficult to make it, because it's emotional and it's physical.
Well,
and
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have those sticky flip chart sheets still hanging in our front room, because every once in a while, probably every 3 months, we'll sit there and say, okay, here's where we're at. Where are we going to go? How many employees can we hire back? Can the income stay up with the employees as we were reopening? Right? There's still still our goal chart for right in the middle of COVID is hanging on our front door with a sticky note sitting there.
So constant looking back at the goals, the objectives, the strategy, and fine tuning that for the period of time. You have to.
You have to. If all you do is stay stagnant, you'll die. I can guarantee it.
Yeah.
Changing our menu to meet. If we had the exact same menu as we had when we first bought the pizzeria, people would quit coming. They want new, exciting stuff. Well, you can't just expand your menu until it's a scroll.
Right.
You have to narrow it down and change, and people like that.
Yep. So, Ann, what do you do to get away from the business?
Well, we have grandchildren, of course, and well, not of course, but we have grandkids, and I like to be with them when I can. I have a couple horses that I ride when I have time.
Yeah. Not as much as she wants.
Gardening and cooking,
Yeah.
pretty basic kind of stuff.
And then, Mike, how about you? What do you do when you want to get away?
Well, I love hunting and fishing. The
Yeah.
last couple of years, I've been able to take my grandkids. We own a little piece of property up near the National Forest Service, and it has a little, I call it a cabin, but it's more of a shack that we built, and take them up there. We camp. And
Yep.
in years past, I've tried to take them up there during the summer. And just, I love being with the grandkids. Want to make sure they have an outdoor experience, because I grew up hunting and fishing all over in Bend, Oregon, and think it's important for them. Bought them both 22s, and we target practice up there. Just shoot bows and arrows at targets. Since I've hunted with my grandkids, I haven't ever killed anything, because normally they're tromping behind you. You don't see anything, but
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, right. You're just out there with
It's
them.
the experience.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, it's been great visiting with
Yo,
you.
you too. Thank
You got a wonderful pub here. So, folks, if you're coming through the area, be sure you stop at Chief Springs Fire and Irons Brew Pub and meet Ann and Mike and enjoy some good local home brewed brew and some good food and good
Absolutely.
company in a good community. Thanks very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. And good luck on your ride.
Thank you.